What's up, guys? So in today's video, I'm going to bring you along with me as I make these really cool projects out of scrap wood. And just to be clear, when I make these projects, I'm using battery operated tea lights. I'm not using real candles. Project number 1, plywood pillar candles. I'm using my 1x4 boards as my guide to the overall measurements for all of my boards. So 1x4 boards are actually 3.5 inches wide. So I set a stop block up on my chop saw to be at 3.5 inches. So when I cut each piece of wood, it's going to be 3.5 inches on all 4 sides. So now I'm going to move on to my 1/4 inch scrap piece of plywood, and I'm going to cut that into strips at 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to go back and cut my blocks at 3.5. Then I'm going to move on to my 1/2 inch scrap plywood, and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my 3/4 inch plywood, and I cut 5 blocks out of each size board. And when I was finished cutting with all the boards, I went in with 80 grit sandpaper and I sanded down the sides and the tops of each of my boards. And plywood is made of layers, so when you're sanding, you may take off some of the top layer of your plywood, but that's okay because we're not going to see the top or the bottom of the boards. We're only going to see the sides. Now I'm taking all my boards inside, and I'm taking my 1x4 pine board only, and I'm going to stain the outside edges with Early American by Minwax. I'm being very liberal on the amount of stain that I'm using on each board, and I'm not going to go back and wipe back the stain. I'm just going to leave it, and hopefully it makes the stain a little bit darker, and I'm not going to worry about blotchiness of the stain or anything like that because it's such a small surface area. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to let them dry. And once they dried, I laid out my boards to see how I wanted them to look. And I noticed that my 1/4 inch plywood was kind of being lost in the mix, especially against my 1/2 inch plywood and my 3/4 inch plywood. So I decided that I would take my 1/4 inch plywood and paint that with white paint. And again, not caring about covering up the top or the bottom of the board because we're not going to see that. And I found once I did that, like the white paint stuck out really nice on the boards, and I really liked it. Now that all of our boards are dry, I'm going to go in with some wood glue and some brad nails, and I'm going to start attaching my boards to each other. I first started spreading out the wood glue with a paintbrush, and then realized that if I just wiggled the board a little bit, it would stay slightly better on the board. And I first started out using 1/4 inch brad nails to attach all the boards together, and you'll see pretty quickly that I realized that it's not going to hold these boards together very well. So then I decided that I needed to use 1 1/4 inch brad nails, so I just switched out my gun really quick and got back to work. I also used some of my other pieces of wood to kind of hold the plywood in place because, as you know, if you've worked with wood glue before, it can make your boards really slippery, so this definitely helped me out. And after I put my final board on, it's time to find the center of the board so we can drill a hole for our tea light. So I take my ruler and a pencil, and I put my ruler on each corner and then do a small mark in the center. And when they're all done, we're going to move back out into the garage into my drill press, where I have attached a 2-inch drill bit. And here I'm going to start figuring out the depth that I want my hole to be on top of my pillar. So I just bring my drill bit all the way down and I start moving, I think it's called the foot of the drill bit, until I get to the depth that I want on my drill bit, and then I lock my foot in place, and then we can start drilling a hole. And drill bits have a point in the center of them, so I'm just going to take that and find the X that we made earlier and press that tip right into the wood, and this is just going to help me guide my drill bit into the wood to drill the hole. Then I'm just going to repeat this process for the rest of my pillars. And there you have it, 3 candle holders. I love these. I love the colors, and I really like that you can see the live edge of the plywood. Next project, dice. So I asked the hubs to help me out with this one because I cut 2 of the 4x4s, and then I was like, nope, I need his help on this. They're a little bit too tough for me and I didn't want to do it. So he helped me out, and as you know, 4x4s are not actually 4 inches, they're 3.5 inches. So took the 4x4 and we cut them down to 3.5 inches. So we got a total of 5 blocks. And I went online and I just googled die template, and this is what came up on my left hand side, which is really cool. And I also cut out each one of these templates using my Silhouette Cameo. And I used this template just to guide me to make sure that I was putting the numbers on the right side of each one of these blocks. And if I ever got confused at one point, I would just go back to the number 6 and then I would continue from there. And I just used a pencil to mark where we should put the holes in each one of the dice. And yes, there is a name to the holes on a die, and I don't remember what that name is, and if you do, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I think it's a pretty interesting name if I can remember correctly. But so I'm going to do this to all 5 of my blocks, and then we are going to head outside back to the good old drill press. So I added a 1/2 inch cove bit to my drill press to make the holes, and here I'm just trying to figure out my depth yet again. I would have much rather had a bigger bit. I think I would have liked to go to at least a 3/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch, but I didn't have one on hand. I did contemplate whether or not I should go out and buy one, and my husband and I tested this one. We said, you know, it looks fine. Let's just stick with what we have. So that's what we did. And our drill press is a Ryobi, and I actually really love the drill press. It's a big tool, it's heavy, and it looks intimidating, but once you start to use it, it's not at all. I actually really love this thing. And what's awesome about it is, even though it looks huge, it's not even loud at all, which is really cool. And of course, I am going to drill all of my holes in all of my blocks. And we're moving back inside so we can paint the holes in each one of the dice. So I'm using Krylon paint. It's an actual exterior black paint made for wood, and I really love this stuff. I use it all the time. So once it's done, I obviously didn't do a very good paint job and just kind of slopped it in there. So I took all the dice back outside and sanded the tops just to try to remove some of that paint. And also please ignore the frizzy hair in the top left corner. That is actually just clean air dried hair. So I was going to actually leave these all just the natural wood tone color with the black paint. I love that combination, but my daughter came in, she looked at them and she said, "Mom, I really think you should add some stain." So I contemplated, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna add some stain, but this time I wanted to go with gray. So I got my classic gray by Minwax and I started to add the stain to each one of these blocks. Now I didn't want the stain to be too opaque on the blocks because I wanted the wood to still show through. I really liked the grain of the wood on these 4x4s, so I just added a small amount of stain, and then I took a separate shop rag and immediately wiped them down. And then of course I'm going to let these fully dry overnight. And my full intention of these were just to make a few of them for decor in the house, but I decided to do 5, and that way you could use them as yard dice for a game, or if you're not using them for yard dice, then you can actually set them up and have them in your house as decor. I think they're really cute. And last but not least, candle holders. So I'm going to go to my chop saw and I'm going to set it at 45 degrees, and I'm going to take one of my scrap 2x4s and I'm going to miter the end of one of the scraps. Sorry about the armpit shot. That's not going to end very soon. And then I take my measuring tape and I measure from the long point and mark where I want my 45 to be on the other side. I take my second piece of scrap and I just 45 the end of that. And then I will match up the completed edge of this board to the completed edge of my first board, and then I will mark on the end, as you can hardly not see here, with my pencil where the next 45 should be, and then I'll take that right back to the chop saw and 45 that end. This helps just ensure that the boards are going to be very even in size rather than measuring from long point to long point on every single board. So I'm going to do that with all of my boards, all 12 of my boards, and then I'm going to take 80 grit sandpaper and I'm going to sand all of my boards. And I want to make sure I also sand off any of the writing that might be on the boards. So when I'm done with that, I take 3 of my boards that are going to be the tops of my candle holders, and I'm going to find center again on all 3 of those boards. And I'm going to go back to the drill press with my 2-inch bit and I'm going to drill a hole for my candle. And once that's done, I can bring all of the boards inside and I'm going to stain all of these with Early American by Minwax. And instead of leaving the stain on these, I'm actually going to wipe back the stain. And as you can see, I'm not staining the mitered ends of the boards because we will be using wood glue to attach these together, and wood glue doesn't adhere very well to stained parts of the wood, so we'll just skip that part. You're not going to see it anyways. I'll continue to stain the remaining boards and let them all dry. Now we're going to join our boards together with wood glue and 1 1/4 inch brad nails. And if you know anything about 2x4s, they can actually be pretty wonky boards. So sometimes putting these mitered ends together, you have to kind of push and get right into it, as you can see my head there. But just kind of push those down and hold it and then pin it in. You can also use straps and clamps and things like that, but I was in my shop and didn't have those with me. So pure weight helped on that part. And all 3 are done. And of course my daughter has seen these in my shop and has claimed them for her apartment, and she wants to still use them as candle holders, but hang them on the wall and use them for shelves as well. Really cute. Alright guys, well that concludes today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And also, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have, we appreciate your support. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.